we're trying to pin down what the motivation for this ideology might be. Like the notion that your identity is yours alone to determine strikes me as it's profoundly narcissistic. It seems to me to be predicated on the idea that you have the right to be master of your own domain, master of your own your outcome, regardless of people around you. You're the only person that has to be taken into account. So that would go along with the express claim that you're the only person that can determine what your identity is. It seems to me to be a very infantile and narcissistic wish that that might be the case. You know, that you could decide who you were and that the world would be forced to bend around your will. And I can understand that, again, as I said, because everybody fights a battle against society molding them and destroying their individuality while they're socialized. There's something there that's valid to rebel against. But generally speaking, as you mature, you start to understand that you have to negotiate your way through the world with other people, and that the benefits of being acceptable to other people outweigh the costs to your own narcissistic self-determination. And it's the desire to not have to contend with that compromise that drives, I believe, the insistence that you are the only person that can determine your identity.
That's right. I think that the activists in this movement have a lot more in common with, say, the Black Lives Matter movement and others such, so-called woke movements than they do with adult transgender people. When I interview gender adults, they don't insist that they were always girls or always boys. They don't ask you to suspend reality. They say, look, I had gender dysphoria from the time I was a child. I struggled with it for many years as an adult. I went through therapy and I realized this was the way to, calm my gender dysphoria. And this is how I'm most comfortable presenting. That's not imposing anything on the world, really. But the group of insistent activists, many of whom are not transgender themselves, but insist that we suspend reality, that medical professionals agree with them. Yes, you were always a girl or you were always a boy. This kind of stuff. This is an aggressive ideological movement that really has nothing to do with gender dysphoria per se.
Yeah, well, I've been trying to put my finger on, while I was reading your book as well, what it is that's the driving factor. And, if you look at, there's broad philosophical streams like those that emerge from the writings of Rousseau that claim that human beings as individuals are essentially good and pristine in their fundamental nature, and that it's culture that corrupts them. And it's a very one-sided view. You can take the Hobbesian perspective, which is exactly the opposite, and say that, well, people are self-interested, narcissistic, and malevolent, and it's only society that makes them good. And I would say a balanced viewpoint emerges if you integrate both of those views, even though they're paradoxical to some degree. You pay for your socialization and you benefit, and you sacrifice something of value, but you also gain. And that's what you decide if you're mature. If you stay locked in the notion that social pressure in and of itself is the perverting force that destroys your soul and your psyche, then you're going to be motivated to push as hard as you can to justify your claims that your identity is something that you yourself determine and that no one has any right to interfere with that whatsoever. And maybe if you have to sacrifice people in order to justify that claim, that's okay, because the claim is important enough to you so that those sacrifices are warranted.